Your name for the record and where you live.
Okay, I'm already signed in, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Yakim. I do live in Monroeville. Before I start, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Manager Sedlak, and Solicitor Dice, good evening to all of you. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to address council and yourself again this evening. Last week, I asked the question as to whose decision it was to unhire 5 newly hired police officers. Mr. Mayor, you would not answer my question citing personnel issues, but then Councilman Grieshock proceeded to discuss the department manpower. You also stated that you would have more to say about my comments later, but once again you failed to give a response. I think the public as well as I would like to know about the manpower situation of our police department, especially in light of last night. Mr. Mayor, this is not a personnel issue, but a manpower issue and a budget issue. Last week, Councilman Grieshock compared the staffing needs of our police department to the staffing needs of various communities around the area. I have a few questions regarding those comparisons that I would like to pose to you and to Councilman Grieshock. How many low-income housing projects are in Cranberry Township? How many bus stops come into Cranberry from low-income city neighborhoods? How does this compare to Monroeville? What is the median income in Mount Lebanon compared to Monroeville? How many hospitals does Mount Lebanon have? How many emergency rooms? Is Mount Lebanon the geographic location of the second busiest intersection in the state of Pennsylvania? How many malls does Plum have compared to Monroeville? How many hotels and motels? Do they have any flea bag hotels? Or do they have any hotels that permit junkies to pay with only cash? Has he done a demographic comparison between Monroeville and Upper St. Clair or Bethel Park or North Huntington? All of these communities, which Councilman Grieshock used as examples last week, are vastly different from Monroeville. You cannot compare just the residential population of these communities. It is important to consider Monroeville's transient population, our demographics, our social economic information. These communities that Councilman Grieshock has referenced do not have all of the following: large shopping and retail areas, significant business and industry, 3 hospitals, 2 emergency rooms, a college, 3 high school programs that bring into our community students who fall outside of the mainstream educational system, a wave pool, significant hotels, including those that do not require credit cards, a favorite for the drug dealers and prostitutes, a large numbers of bars and restaurants, major traffic arteries that provide a crossroad for all kinds of crime, low-income housing projects, not just low-income housing, but buildings in areas that tend to concentrate our low-income population. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Grieshock also compares our community policing needs to that of Penn Hills. Penn Hills has only 45 officers, according to Councilman Grieshock. Penn Hills has a huge crime problem compared to ours, with not nearly the hotel, motel, retail, industrial, or traffic patterns as us. I would argue that Penn Hills is vastly understaffed. And I would also argue that most residents would not want to trade Penn Hills' crime problems and the perception of those crime problems with ours. The idea of a large police department is to prevent crime, not to have our crime problem become like Penn Hills. Last week, I referenced previous chiefs of police and previous councils as having previously placed our manpower needs at between the high 40s and the mid 50s. Councilman Grieshock, with his police experience, suggests our department can be smaller because the communities around us have smaller departments. The FBI and the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, report ratios of officers to residents. The averages for a community our size is 1.8 and 2.3 officers per 1,000 residents. If Monroeville brings their department up to 48 officers, our ratio will only be 1.6 officers per 1,000 residents. This fails to take into consideration the daytime population of Monroeville, which swells beyond 100,000 per day. If Mr. Sedlak continues to let the manpower dwindle to 40 officers, we will be at 1.3 officers per 1,000 residents. This would be well below the averages, and I and others believe our diminished department will put our residents and officers at risk. I would argue that the FBI and the IACP have a better handle of police manpower needs than councilmen from the 2nd Ward. Several years ago, I ran for council and I was unsuccessful. One of the issues that I ran on was to try to improve safety of our community. I wrote letters, I talked to residents and cops, and I even managed to get your attention, Mr. Mayor, with a letter to the editor about crime being on everybody's mind. We were in the middle of a burglary spree, and we had an inordinate number of shootings that year. I believe you attacked my letter, Mr. Mayor. The police are here to protect us, but we need to make sure they have the resources they need to stay safe. In my opinion, 3 things keep officers alive: equipment, training, and manpower. And last week, and during this budget, we are discussing the manpower needs. By unhiring those 5 officers, by that single move, Acting Manager Sedlak has set our police manpower at 40 cops sometime during the first half of next year. He has done this without any public debate. Even if you believe, as Councilman Erb does, that we should not backfill retirements prior to the actual retirement, you still do not have to unhire all 5. I believe, and others share my belief, that a 40-man roster puts our residents, visitors, and officers at risk. I want to read something to you from a website called Officer Don Memorial Page. The site memorializes police officers from all over the United States who have lost their lives in the line of duty. I want to read something from their page regarding a line of duty death that occurred in one of the communities that Councilman Grieshock cited in his comments last week. I am not mentioning the officer's name out of respect. I do not want to use his name in a political discussion. Here is the first paragraph describing the events of this officer's death, December 6, 2009. Officer was shot and killed in an ambush while responding to a call on Johnson Road. He had been the first officer to arrive on the scene, and he had parked several houses away to wait for backup. He died while waiting for backup. No one can say for sure if this department had an extra man or 2 on the shift if this officer would be alive today. But we do know this. This department frequently has officers responding to calls alone because of a lack of manpower. We also know this department frequently has calls stacked, waiting for available officers to respond. And we know on December 6th, 2009, an officer on Johnson Road died alone, waiting for backup. I hope the discussions of this council and the next will never leave one of our men or women waiting for backup. I appreciate the time to address you this evening.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen,